How you guys doing? My name is George Morton. I'm going to talk to you about my cost benefit analysis that I did on the World Cup. First, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history about what exactly the World Cup is, a little bit of information, some of my calculations, and obviously, and then some of the risks that go along with, of course, dealing with some of the stakeholders, internal and external, and as well as the just risk of having the overall competition. The synopsis that I came up with for the 2026 World Cup was found to be beneficial financially for the United States. Although there's technically three host countries hosting the World Cup that year, the USA does have the facilities to facilitate such a big tournament. As I further go along and explain this, I'll be able to understand why. The purpose of this entire analysis was to see if it was beneficial for the United States to host the 2026 World Cup. The problem that we addressed would be over the years, FIFA has been known to as basically as a corrupt organization. Bribery, fraud, and money laundering has been the subject of FIFA's negative press. The bidding process of who hosts World Cups has said to have been corrupt as well. Countries such as Brazil, who hosted the World Cup in 2014, had protests due to billions of dollars used to help fund the World Cup. Using some of the data from the 2014 Cup, I can compare in comparison with the 2026 bid that was for the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. I'll be able to see if the bid is actually beneficial for them. The FIFA World Cup is an international tournament that is held every 4 years. Jules Rimet led a group of French football administrators in the 1920s to bring the idea of bringing the world's best national football teams together to compete for a title of the world champions. That's the World Cup. The first championship was actually held in Uruguay in the 1930s. Today, that tournament has grown huge. In terms of Global Web Index, stated that the 2014 World Cup viewership was right under 3.4 billion people. That is ridiculous. The main focus of the FIFA World Cup throughout history is obviously is to win. Everybody wants to be able to have the trophy and be able to proudly show off their country. The FIFA World Cup has grown into the second most popular sporting event in the world behind the Summer Olympics. The event itself has grossed millions of dollars over the years through marketing sponsorships and overall viewership. In 1994, the U.S. actually hosted the World Cup. When they had the World Cup in Los Angeles, they launched a new era of commercials and was also branded with big marketing sponsors like Coca-Cola and Adidas, and it allowed them to bring a total in just the finals match allowed them to bring in a total profit of $620 million. That event for itself became a major development piece and why we have Major League Soccer in the U.S. as of now. So as far as gathering information, I used some of the data from the 2014 World Cup in Brazil because that was the most recent that I could find in terms of hard data to be able to compare with the three. And then I also want to explain to you guys the bidding process for actually being able to have the World Cup be hosted in your country. The bidding process has three individual assessments for the host country: compliance assessment, risk, and technical evaluation. The compliance assessment of it is when FIFA pretty much verifies if you are compliant with the rules that they have in place. For example, dealing with proper ethics. As we talked before, FIFA's been under a lot of scrutiny over the past couple of years due to some of their money laundering, their briberies from particular countries to be able to host the World Cup, things like that. The compliance assessment is when, like I said, FIFA verifies if you've been compliant within the rules that they have in place. The risk assessment is when FIFA verifies if hosting the event is your country is like if it's at risk for a terrorist attack or if it's basically a safe environment for the players, coaches, staff, and as well as the fans as well. With the 2018 World Cup being in Russia, a lot of people saw that as being a very touchy situation. Obviously, with not to bring politics into it, but as we had we've had the issues with Russia and the U.S. election and everything over the past couple of years. Obviously, with the World Cup being there, is a very, very sensitive subject. Lastly, was the technical evaluation report, which is actually the most important part of the bidding process. The key components for this were actually like the stadiums, the facilities, accommodations, and as well as transportation. So with this assessment, if as long as you're able to pass, you'll be able to at least put in a bid to be able to host the World Cup. The formulas that I used to be able to see if the World Cup was beneficial for the U.S. was I basically did total income, which is total revenue minus total expenses, as well as like return on investment. The reason why I chose not to go with the CBA is because I only needed to really answer the question to see if it was beneficial, not necessarily how much the U.S. would need to be able to put out, because of the fact dealing with the different stadiums and things like that, and because FIFA for the 2026 bid that the U.S., Mexico, and Canada did win, they have not yet chosen what stadiums are going to be used for what games and what actual modifications need to be made. So I would kind of just be shooting from the hip. But according to the FIFA financial report in 2014, the 2014 World Cup had $5.8 billion in total revenue, which was in Brazil, with a $5.38 billion in total expenses, which was a result of $338 million total profit gained by Brazil. Using these numbers within the 2026 bid, we understand that the majority of the expenses they come from one country. But being the fact that the U.S., Mexico, and Canada are splitting, 60% of the actual funds would come from the U.S., and the other 40% will come from Mexico and Canada, split evenly. So basically, taking that $5.8 billion, multiplying it times 60%, we would have $3.4 billion for revenue. And then taking the 5.38 times the 60%, we've had 3.22 for expenses. Being left over, we would have about $18 million in profit for the 2026 bid. I know that sounds a little off, but those are just basically rough estimate numbers. Because obviously the benefits of having the World Cup in the U.S. completely outweigh the disbenefits. Although having an event of this magnitude is costly, but because we have the majority of the infrastructures already in place in terms of the multiple football stadiums, it makes the output in terms of overall citizens a lot less. That's been the major issues for like a lot of the smaller countries, is that they've had to put out more money than what honestly they could afford. That was the biggest issue within Brazil, as they've had protests before the World Cup, before when they won the bid, and actually during the World Cup, was that money pretty much was going to be wasted. It was the same thing similar in 2010 with South Africa. South Africa spent millions on trying to rebuild, on building stadiums and having all these parking lots, and now they're just sitting empty, vacant. And I have a map of the cities that were selected in the U.S. It would be, these are just probable. There's not a guarantee that they will be selected as of right now. But you're looking at Atlanta, Baltimore, Boston, Cincinnati, Dallas, Denver, Houston, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Miami, Nashville, New York, Orlando, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. The pros and cons. Obviously, having the World Cup, it does open up jobs for the economy. It's entertainment for all soccer fans. It exposes the sport of soccer to Americans, which obviously everybody knows is not one of our top 4 sports. But I feel like with the more exposure, the more marketing, it will be able to bring more things here. I know they currently do have like a lot of the exhibition tournaments come over where you see like the big soccer clubs come and play in the football stadiums, and that's been drawing a lot of buzz over the past couple of years. The couple cons that you would see with dealing with the World Cup is obviously security concerns. It's always a security concern dealing with, you have multiple, people from multiple countries. Not everybody gets along. Dealing with, terrorist issues, things like that. Obviously, that comes with crime and robbery, and obviously, with referees dealing with robbery, things like that, with them being able to fix games. And obviously, FIFA as an organization, they aren't. FIFA has done a lot to redo their image, but they're still not looked at as being 100% fair, per se. As far as my stakeholders, I broke them down into three separate categories. It would be like event planning, management, marketing, and security. For event planning, the roles are extremely important for the functionality of the World Cup as far as management. You would have like an event director and event manager, which would oversee the event as it goes through the planned venue without any incidents. You'd have a programming manager that would oversee the programming of the event, and you would have a guest and VIP manager basically in charge of guest services. Obviously, security will cover the safety, medical, and welfare of the event. They are in place to make sure that the event is secure. You would have a marketing and advisement to cover event sales as well as any type of signage, sponsorship, which obviously sponsorship is extremely important because the more corporate dollars that you have to go towards the expenses that would be needed, it's less money that would be asked from actual taxpayers that are here. As far as external stockholders, you would obviously start with sponsors because they would provide obviously the free marketing. Speakers and individual performers, it's always good to be able to have different artists and things come out to be able to perform there. For example, if you had a Beyonce come, obviously you're going to get the soccer fans to come, but you're going to get all of her fans to come as well, which all it does is add more to your attendance, and it gets more marketability for the event. Stadium staff as well will be needed, as well as volunteers, because you need employees to be able to help run your event. The more help you have, the better off it would be. As far as my bias towards the World Cup would obviously be that I would definitely want the U.S. to be able to host the World Cup, because of the fact, obviously, I'm biased because I want my country to be in the World Cup. So obviously, with hosting, they get an automatic bid. The hardest thing I think it would be, I would say, in terms of me having individual bias, would be dealing with the wanting to have, obviously living in the DC area, I would want DC to have one of those World Cup games. And in terms of the actual stadiums, that's one of the ones that needs the most work, considering, because that's one of the older stadiums out of the cities that were selected. As far as stakeholders, fans are obviously a huge reason of why you want the event of the magnitude. I mean, common sense, more fans that purchase tickets, the more money and income that you would get coming into the event. Obviously, more money, more jobs. Overall risk would definitely have to be dealing with terrorism. The U.S. right now is not exactly on the world's greatest list in terms of people who overall, really like us as a country right now. You could say finances would be a risk, because obviously you don't want to be responsible for putting out too much money financially, but you would never expect an event like the World Cup to flop. Again, like I said earlier, it's the second biggest event in the world. So in conclusion, I feel the 2026 bid would be very smart, both financially and economically for the U.S. Although in '94, when they had the World Cup here, they weren't able to take as much funds as they probably thought they would have. But now going with a combined effort with Mexico and Canada, it allows them to divide the expenses, which will definitely help out. And another positive, honestly, it will help improve the MLS popularity, and just drive the sport of soccer in the U.S. Thank you guys for your time. Have a good one.